Okay, so Martine, you mentioned that you had a busy weekend because you were watching the podcast and videos preparing for your oral presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we'll talk about the podcast afterward. But let's start with your presentation.
Okay.
So what you can share your screen when you're ready, Martine, and
Yes. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
and you can just begin whenever you're ready.
Okay. There, you're able to see it.
Not yet. Yes, now I can see it.
Okay. Well, this is my presentation. Let me. Okay. There we go. Um. Well, I choose the Yakuza. And this secret society, well, right now is not that secret. Is this society, this gang is well known in nowadays in the world. But I choose it because I find it really, really interesting, and because they have historically operated with corporate offices. This is an interesting fact of them because some other gangs are hide in the streets in because they are afraid of authorities of police officers. But the Yakuza, they literally have in the middle of the street a place that says Mafia Yakuza, and they're right there, and authorities don't even bother them at all. What else? Oh yeah, they also are very active today. However, their membership have drastically declined over the last the 2 decades to severe government crackdowns or anti-gang laws in Japan. I'm going to talk about that later when we are going to connect the points between Yakuza and the government. Historically, historically, the Yakuza originated in the period of Edo in Japan in six in the 1600s. Well, the they started for to provide a family and mutual protection for a Japanese society and to and to and for protect this for protect some society that didn't have a lot of money. Hmm. And I think to before start, what people find interesting in the Yakuza is that they are not only ruthless criminals that steal, because they actually follow step by step a samurai code of honor called Nikkyo, which forbids them to harming ordinary citizens and dictate that they must help the weak people. They also cannot harm women, children, or elder people. Well, now the influence in the present. The Yakuza is still very active in nowadays, but it has declined a lot since the 1900s. The gold era of the Yakuza was in the 1900s because it's the best time. It was the best time for the gang. Everything was going right for them. But let's talk about how it started. Well, the Yakuza started as from a group of ordinary people. It was called Unikami people. These people were like the black dog. They people didn't like the Unikami people. The Unikami people, their works were like butchers, leather workers, undertakers, wherever it was referring to have the blood of the dead in your hands, and it was in that time to that people they were considered only a seventh part of an ordinary person. Could you even imagine that? Like the prize that they give to the Unigami people was not even a whole person, just a seventh part of it. And that was really sad. But this treatment did not started in the 1600s. It started a long time ago before the Edo period. But in the Edo period, it was when the things became even worse because the disrespectful, the hate people have against the Unigami people was so much they even created laws to make them go away. The sons of the Unigami people weren't even allowed to study or have an ordinary life. And even a lot of them were exiliated from the cities, which it was for the time it was terrific. Then obviously every cause has its effect. So due to this, the sons of the Gunigami people have to choose two paths or be like mom and dad and struggle their whole lives, people hating them and having and disrespectful them, or take a shortcut to the criminal life. As you can guess, because we're talking about Yakuza, they took the second option. So, and to be honest, this couldn't have ended better for them. Well, better for them because at the end they start stealing some temples and setting the first casinos. So first they get a lot of money and respectful, and second they get what they always wanted the respect from the people and authorities. The respect from them was so big that even authorities give them the honor to have a last name and to carry a sword. So for them this was like wow, criminal life does work for us. And then the the Yakuza has advanced a lot in nowadays. As I told before, the gold era of the Yakuza was at at the 1900s. This is because so many things get it's because the Yakuza understand something that a lot of guns didn't. They start instead of looking for the crime, instead of looking for steal, because it's another interesting fact. The Yakuza do not steal. They do not commit a ruthless crime. Now they just concentrate in organized crime like drugs, casinos, even drugs, casinos, and even investment, even in the in buying houses. So what these members do in the 1900s what was that the Yakuza sent their members to extortionate people, very wealthy people that had a, a lot of a lot of territory or houses and all of that, and they said you are going to sell me this house. So the Yakuza realized their better option to get money wasn't to steal or to do something bad, but more to extortionate people and get more power from them. And the same happened in the investment. The Yakuza started buying the identifications of homes of homeless people for invest so as for invest for themselves. But talking about more about the Yakuza, they have a lot of traditions. For example, let's talk about the tattoos that the Yakuza people have. This tradition become for more as a sign of respect because In the ancient times, when a yakuza or a criminal was caught by authorities, the authorities tattoo their body to for them to be ashamed of themselves. So if you see a person with a tattoo, then you know he's a criminal, then you know he have done bad things. So in response to this, the yakuza uh, the Yakuza take this as an advantage. So now you can see that the Yakuza have a lot of the tattoos in their body, and they actually have a meaning because and it depends on your personality or what you have done for the Yakuza. If you are an angry man, but you can control that angry for the group, they tattoo you a demon or an oni in Japanese, uh, um, showing the world that you have that anger, you have that power, you have that flame in you. If you are more of an intelligent people, they tattoo you a dragon. And these tattoos are made with a stick of bamboo, and the process takes about 48 hours without non-stopping to tattoo your whole body. And also another tradition we can see here, as you can see here, he doesn't have the small finger of his left hand. This also started a long time ago because the honor code they have, if you don't follow them, you just get exiled. You just get exiled out of the group. But if you commit an error, a really bad error, what they do is that they cut one of your fingers. And there's also, it's not only a sacrifice or something for yourself to be ashamed. This has did well in the past. Did had this has did had a this had a meaning because if you cut that finger, then the grip in your sword became weaker. So your slashes weren't the same as before. So you were weaker, and that's what and so the error you make cost you the grip in your sword and may saying even sometimes your life. um, Now talking about the relationship between the government and the Yakuza. Uh, at first, well, in nowadays, normally the government is against the Yakuza. Well, not the Yakuza, the gangs members and the gangs. But in Japan, this wasn't really what happened because because the Yakuza were seen as a bad necessary. For example, as I told you before, the Yakuza had actually an honor code. They follow a samurai honor code. They were also want to see as the successors of the samurais, the truly successors of the samurais. Example for this, the Yakuza, this mafia also help in a lot of, for example, the earthquake of tsunami in 2011, or the earthquake of Ko in 995. The Yakuza families were the first one that helped stuck people that helped people in that earthquakes because and some call it just like a marketing for them to sell them as good people, good criminals, but you can also see it as they actually have honor. They actually care about the people's life. So, because of this influence and honor the Yakuza have, the government saw them as bad necessary. They were criminals, but they weren't that bad. So, actually, some members of the government have strong relationships between the Yakuza and the government. But this change, as I mentioned at first in the beginning, this change in the late 1900s, because for the golden era of the Yakuza, the government realized that it couldn't let the Yakuza have so many power. So the response was create a lot of laws against them. The first law against Yakuza was in 1995, which prohibited any gang member of the Yakuza to invest in anything, in immobiliary houses, in whatever. They prohibited from do anything. And that's when the war between government and Yakuza started because the government didn't want a gang to have so many power. We're talking about the Yakuza, the gang that have more members at the time, more than 100,000 members, and more than 100,000 members. And since 900 and 995 and 91, where this law was approved, the government has created more and more laws to try to contain the expansion of the Yakuza. Well, um, um, talking about no more, sorry. Um, uh, at first, the Yakuza started as a secret society. And why does secret society exist? They exist in general because to consolidate power, protect shared interests, or as the Yakuza provide a safe haven for people, for poor people, and create a good environment for them. um, also, sorry. Also, the relationship. No, also, um, one thing I forgot to mention about the honor code of the Yakuza, about of what is expected from a new member from the Yakuza. Some traditions I forgot to mention is first in the initiation, there's the new member and his boss. The new member has to serve 2 cups of sake, which is a liquor from Japan, from for his boss and for himself. He drinks that cup of sake, and then he has to give that cup for his boss to his boss, and like he's given himself to the family, to the Yakuza. Another interesting fact of the Yakuza is that they expect you to to cut all contact with your original family. And this for other gangs like the Italian mafia would be unthinkable because as I said, in the Italian mafia, for example, they see the family as even more important than the money. But instead of making people fear the Yakuza or make them see them as ruthless criminal, this make the new members care about the mafia even more because they saw the Yakuza as a new family and they didn't even care to leave their family before and their poor life before to be in the Yakuza. Uh, what conclusions have I achieved from this is that um, first, governments know about secret organizations. They're the first to know. And it's their decision to maintain them secret or not. Some say the secret is bad, some say the secret is necessary, so no more people want to join the gang of this group. But I think in general, secrecy is bad because governments are hiding this hiding this information for the population, and this actually uh, for groups of poor people. My point is, instead of hiding information from everybody, just making the just making the country look good while it is not, I think it would be better to know to advertise about these groups to people so their sons or whoever it is doesn't get to this gang. So secrecy is it's true that it is not always a bad thing, but it's dangerous in the hands of unorganized crime. Also, I learned that the Yakuza are rarely see as villains in Japan. As I explained a lot before, they're seen as criminals, but with respect. They have gained that respect from people. And they're and Yakuza's families don't even want to show that they are Yakuza's a lot. Instead of a lot of gangs that they proudly show their tattoos to people, the Yakuza have prohibited to show their tattoos. Only in special occasions like festivals, they can go without a lot of clothes and show proudly that they are Yakuza. And in conclusion, my conclusion is that the Yakuza or any gang in the world right now is a consequence of a bad government. It's a consequence of poor people that were exiliated, that were far from society, and didn't have any other real option to have a great life more than a criminal life. So, Yakuza and other gangs, for example, in my country, Ecuador, or in South America, actually come from this poor reality that people don't have that opportunity and they need to, and their only opportunity they have is to commit crime. Um, well, thank you. That was my presentation. Any questions about it?
Okay, Martine, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you explaining all of that. That was a lot of information that I did not know about the Yakuza. I thought I knew about the Yakuza, but apparently I did not. So, um, it was very informative, but the last part for me was a little bit unsettling, and I'll explain why. I have a question for you, Martine.
Okay.
You mentioned that the Yakuza, you talked about the origin of the Yakuza,
Yes.
uh, and you made a comparison to the modern day and other criminal gangs like the ones in Ecuador. However, you painted the Yakuza and other criminal groups as victims of circumstance, people who are poor and don't have any other alternative and don't have any other choice but to commit crime. And I want to push back a little bit on this because one option is to not commit crime. Every person, regardless of economic status, has agency. Agency is the ability to choose your own destiny, to choose what you do in this life. So crime is observed in the high class of society, the middle class of society, and the low class of society. Crime is not a phenomena of poor people. However, you presented it as a direct correlation or maybe a causative relationship, direct causation between poverty and crime. And this is what I want to push back on because let's talk about Ecuador for a moment. There are many poor people in Ecuador, but do you think the majority of them are criminals?
No.
No. So you do not have to be a criminal because you are poor. Do you think that um, it is possible to create a business and do things legally and correctly and get out of poverty, Martine? Is it possible? I'm not asking if it's hard. I'm asking if it's possible.
Is an easier path than doing a normal job, a normal life is the easiest path. The criminal life is the easiest path.
That's not my question. My question is it possible for a person who's poor to create a company or a business and work very hard and get out of poverty? Is that possible?
Mm, but committing crimes or not?
No, I'm not talking about crime. Can a poor person start a business, work very hard, and get out of poverty?
I don't think so.
Really? So no poor people have ever been successful.
But it's more rare. It,
So I'm not asking if it's common or rare. I'm asking, is it possible?
yeah.
So it's not impossible.
hmm
Okay. So we have established that it is possible through hard work to get out of poverty, even though it's not common. I agree with that. But your idea that the Yakuza are victims of circumstances, or the choneros or lagartos or any of these groups are simply victims of bad circumstances. I disagree with this, Martine, because the majority of poor people are good, decent people. And they don't choose crime because they understand that crime is wrong. Crime creates a victim. There's a victim when crime is committed. So, my question is, do you really believe that crime is caused because of the lack of money?
I believe it's a consequence about it. I'm not saying it justifies because it doesn't really justifies. Uh, my argument about that poor people or extremely poor people sometimes are they have to choose between criminal life or not because their situation or their circumstances is a reality that happens at least in South America. And you're right, there are a lot of honorable and good poor people that they wouldn't steal a single penny from anyone because they were thought well. But I think that the reality is that there are poor people. There are extremely poor people that because of their circumstances become criminals. uh, that doesn't justifies them, but it justifies the path they took. I don't know if I made understand myself, but the fact that you became criminal because you're poor doesn't justify, oh, your crimes are justified because you had no other options, but justifies why did you took that. I mean, you still need to be in jail, you still need to um, pay back what you have done. But I think it's a great option or a great tool to us to understand why people end up taking the criminal life.
Okay, so I totally disagree with what you're saying. I don't think that it's a reason or explanation for why people become criminals. So, Martine, in Ecuador, you have a lot of criminals who have money. Okay. You have people in the government who are criminals. They're not poor. Why do they commit crimes, Martine?
I like this phrase from this. I don't remember who said it, but it goes like this: the power. corrupts, and more power no, the power corrupts, and completely power corrupts completely a person. And that's absolutely right. I mean, if you ask me, I truly believe that there are the bigger crimes are committed because for rich people, from people that have money, because they have that capability of commit way more, like drugs, like casino, something like that, because they have the money to do that crimes. What I'm just saying is not that poor people became criminals, is that the situation is so bad. Some of them are tempted for that life. And here I want to make this difference between poor people and very rich people. When a very rich people to commits a crime, it's not because he needs the money. It's just because he's so ambitious that he wants more. He has this power and wants more and more power from himself. I think when extremely poor people gets to the criminal life is because his environment has led him to think that is the easiest way for get to get his family or him out of poverty, because this is a real situation. Teenagers about my age became criminals with the dream of getting their fathers, their little sister out of poverty. And if I think we can relate this path, because it's the environment that you're in that leads you to the crime, if you can see it that way. Because a rich people, its environment, it's money, 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 power, power, and what he wants more of it, and he's going to get it with crime. And with poor people, his environment is he needs food, he doesn't have basic serves, he is poor, his family doesn't have to eat, and that leads to the idea to think that criminal life is the better option.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. You're saying the motivation when poor people commit crimes is different than the motivation when rich people commit crimes.
Exactly, and it comes from the environment, as I said. A rich people may have envy about a partner of his, and because of that, he's going to commit crime to just be better than him, because
Okay.
of his ego and all of that.
All right. Well, so I still don't agree with you. And the reason, Martine, is because agency. Humans have agency. Do you believe that some things are moral and others are immoral?
Yes,
Okay, is crime moral or immoral?
um, it's really difficult to say, but
Is it?
it,
It's difficult to say if crime is moral or immoral.
yeah, because when you ask me that question, the image that came to my mind is, remember the when Jesus was crucified
Hmm.
and there were two persons in his sides. One was a completely bad person, and the other one, he still he did commit a crime, but the reason he did that is because his family. And if you ask me if crime is moral or immoral, the image that comes to my mind is a father that has a family that maybe steals for necessity.
Okay, so do you really buy that? Do you really think that the majority of criminals are poor fathers that need to steal to give their kids food? Because
Not the
that's not the
majority,
reality.
but
The reality is the majority of organized crime is committed by guys who want to be gangsters. They want to be gangsters because of the respect, the fear, the power, and the money. Now, many poor people could choose this path in life, but they don't because they have morals and they have empathy. Gangsters don't have morals or empathy. So, this is the reason that their psychology makes them perfect candidates for this lifestyle. A lot of people don't have the food that they need, but they don't abuse the rights of other people. A lot of people don't have the houses or the money that they require, but they don't traffic drugs to the children of other people. There's no justification for these actions. They're destructive. They destroy humanity. And when we justify this and we say, well, this guy is a chonero because he grew up in Guasmosur, which is full of violence and full of poverty. Okay, let's think about that. How many people live in Guasmosur, in Guayaquil? Are the majority of them gangsters? No, they're not. They're hardworking, poor people. Being a gangster is a moral choice that you make. You choose the easy road, knowing that you are going to harm society and harm other people without caring. You care more about getting ahead in life and than you do the consequences of victimizing other people. So being a gangster is a cultural thing. Games like Grand Theft Auto, hip hop music, Narcos series, all of these things glorify the gangster lifestyle. And culture makes gangsters look cool. Music makes gangsters look cool. Fashion makes gangsters look cool. But in reality, gangsters are people who take the easy way and don't care about their communities. And in the case of the Yakuza, don't even care about their families. Yet you say they live a life of honor? So it's honorable to victimize your community, to traffic drugs to your community, to have casinos in your community, and to abandon your family? This, by what standard is this honorable? In what world is this an honorable way of living? I don't see the Yakuza or the Choneros as victims. I see them as people who chose this life because they wanted the ambition. The same ambition that makes a billionaire commit a crime is the same ambition that a gangster in Guayaquil has. Instead of working hard and being a good person and maybe not being rich, not everyone is going to be rich, Martine. Not everyone, even if you work very, very hard, maybe your destiny is not to be rich. But a gangster says, I don't accept that. If I have to kill, if I have to steal, if I have to traffic cocaine to kids, if I have to traffic humans, I'm going to do it because the most important thing to me is having a gold chain and having rings and having a Mercedes Benz. The description that you gave of criminals as fathers who are stealing to give their children food is very, very, I think, naive and unrealistic and disingenuous. If we go to prisons and we interview, and there are many prison series where you see gangsters with all of their faces tattooed and everything. How many of these guys do you think were just stealing a piece of bread for their family, Martine? Be serious. These guys are driven by their egos and their narcissism and their psychopathy, and they have no empathy for you or anyone else. It's only me and my dreams and fantasies of wealth and riches. What do you think about that?
Well, I think a part of what you said mm, gives power to my argument of that they are driven because of that for their environment. And I told you this before. I told that what the crimes they commit doesn't have, they are not justified. What I'm trying to say is they're not justified. What is justified is the path that they see. It's a
Maybe
decision.
justify is the wrong word. Justify might be the wrong word here
Well,
because
maybe led.
justify means to give a reason for something.
I mean, maybe led works for you because the environment lets them to see that path.
Well, anyone sees that path, Martine. You see that path.
Yeah, but here's the difference. I want to be very serious in their environment. As you said, yeah, now the culture glorifies narco traffickers, drugs, gangs, and the gangster life. But to be honest, is you're right. For example, but is what I because the mainly people or the mainly age these gangs, at least in South America, recruit is young people. And
Hmm.
they mainly are poor people because,
But
but
wait a minute. You said that it was fathers stealing for their kids to eat. Now you're saying the majority of these gangs recruit young people. Are these also young people who are fathers and trying to feed their kids? I just want to clarify.
they can be fathers too. But I also
Okay.
put you an image of a teenager looking out, for example, for his little sister, for his little brother, for his family, because sadly in South America, so many families doesn't have a father, doesn't have the man of the house. Sometimes a kid has to be the man of the house and has to help
Hmm.
his mom. And some of them choose the right path, and some of them sadly choose the criminal path. What I'm
Okay,
talking
but
about,
why?
but exactly, there's my argument. The environment that they see, the gang
But they both
life.
grow up in the same environment, Martine. The guy that doesn't choose to be a gangster grows up in the same environment as the guy who chooses to be a gangster. For every person who chooses to be a gangster, there are 10 who choose not to be gangsters. That's what I'm asking you to explain. You're saying the environment creates gangsters. I'm saying no, it doesn't. A choice to choose to be a criminal makes a gangster. The circumstance. Okay, why did Pablo Escobar's brothers not become narcos? Pablo Escobar had brothers. They grew up in the same family, in the same environment. It's not true, Martine. Why does a murderer who has brothers and sisters who grew up in the same circumstances, why don't his brothers and sisters also commit murders? You're saying that people don't have a choice. It's the environment that creates you. And I'm saying that's not right. You're taking responsibility away from the criminal. The person who commits a crime is 100% responsible for that. Not society, not that your mom and dad were divorced, not the school or the neighborhood that you went to. Because there are other people in the same condition or worse who are not criminals. It's a choice. So, how can you explain the fact that in a family, a poor family, one person chooses to be gangster and the other brothers and sisters don't? They choose to be honorable poor people who work, maybe selling candy or chocolate or fruit in the street, but they choose an honest life. Why is that, Martine?
What I'm trying to say is that it's more common. I'm giving you an example. For example, my friends, people about my age that I
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
we have the example, we can look up to our parents. So there's where my choose is because yeah, I have also the choose to be a criminal.
Of course.
Yeah, but if I have my father, if I have my mother, who are two honest people, my father that works a lot, my mother that also works a lot, then I have a vision of what is good, what is
Mm,
correct, and what I can achieve, even though no taking the easy path. And that's
okay.
completely
Yeah.
right. But sadly, some poor people, don't have this. I'm
I
telling you right now, from my grade, for example, they have professors, they have doctors, they have engineers, they have mathematicians as fathers. So my for my generation in my school have somebody to look up. What poor people have, maybe they don't have somebody to look up. So they end up looking up gangsta life.
I disagree again, Martine, because why do you have middle class and rich kids that want to be gangsters?
And
They
but
have good parents to look up to, but they don't choose that. They choose to try to be gangsters. Why?
as I'm telling, yeah, you said it's an option, and you're
It's a
getting in
choice.
that it's a choice. You're getting in that argument all over again. I'm just saying poor people is more easy. I'm not saying
Okay, so
rich,
I don't
medium people
disagree with,
choose.
I think what you're saying is that the environment that poor people live in can
Makes the decision to become criminal more
be
more lovely, like an
more
option,
likely.
more likely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I would agree that poverty and living around violence and drugs,
it is
for
still a
sure.
choice though, but
It's a choice though.
it becomes a choice that you that a poor people looks more closely than medium class people because
I
he has
agree.
food,
I
he
agree with that.
has.
But what I want you to understand, Martine, is at the end of the day, it's a spiritual decision that every human makes. If you're poor and you spend your time on TikTok and Instagram looking at the lives of people who have money and status and wealth, and you are filled with envy and anger, and you allow your envy and anger to motivate you to take the road or the path of crime because you say, why do these people on TikTok have Lamborghinis and I'm in Guasmosur and I don't have a bicycle? I'm going to be a sicario. I'm going to be a drug trafficker. I'm going to do everything I have to do. I agree that those environments are they
Or like
create circumstances. They're the perfect circumstances to attract people that are vulnerable. I agree with that completely. But my point, and I think that this is something that needs to resonate with you, the guy who the a terrorist who blew up the terrorist who flew the plane into New York in September 11th, who killed more than 2,000 people. That's just an example of a type of crime, a crime. But really, any crime where there is a victim, humans make choices, Martine. No one puts a gun to your head and says, do immoral things. No. It is each person's choice, regardless of your social status or of your family or if you had good parents. Every person has a choice to live a moral life or an immoral life. And a lot of the richest people in the world choose the immoral path. So it's what I want you to understand is that morality is the true decision maker here, not your social class. This is the reason that we see in the same family, one person will become a gangster, but the other brothers and sisters, they don't. Because something happens inside the individual, inside the person, and you make a choice. You can choose to accept your circumstances. I'm poor. I live in Guayaquil. It sucks. It's hard. It's terrible. It's miserable. But I'm going to live a moral life. Or you can say, this is my circumstance and screw society, screw everybody, screw my parents, screw God for putting me in this circumstance. and I'm going to do whatever it takes to have money. And those are the messages that rap music. This is why I stopped listening to rap because it's garbage. It's actual garbage for people's brains because it promotes a gangster lifestyle. It victimizes, oh, I was poor, so now I sell crack to kids. And this is how I bought my diamonds in my mansion. And you should celebrate my life. No, it's disgusting. It's immoral. And people suffer. So if people like Pablo Escobar or Fito in Ecuador, Fito probably grew up in a poor family, I imagine, maybe. But Fito made a choice. How many lives has Fito affected, Martin?
Thousands.
Thousands. He made a choice. Our choices have impacts on the lives of other people. So you can choose selfishness, you can choose ambition, and you can choose immorality, regardless of your social class. That's what I want you to understand. I see your point about the circumstances leading to that. And I agree with that. And I think this is why we see higher rates of gangs and stuff in poor areas. Yes. But the thing I want you to understand is even a poor person has a choice, Martine. Right now, culture, at least here in the United States, culture wants you to think poor people don't have a choice
Hmm.
and victimize criminals. John is a gangster because his father abandoned him. John is a gangster because he grew up in the Bronx. John is a gangster, blah, 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 blah. Poor John. Poor John. No, no, no. Poor victims of John. John made a choice. So I think it's important to understand the Yakuza, yeah, it's better than many criminal organizations in some aspects. But at the end of the day, these are still people, as you mentioned, who don't care about their family, their own families, Martine. Does that seem honorable to you? To abandon your mom and your dad and your brother for a criminal group? That's honor? Not in my book. That's the opposite of honor. That's the very definition of narcissistic selfishness. Am I wrong?
No.
So, why do you think these people are glorified in culture and in video games and movies? The worst people in our society, why do you think they receive so much attention?
Mm, because they are glorified. And as you said, that's a moral decision. And it also is something that you're taught. I would like to ask you if you think, because I really like I know some poetries from for example the Greeks, and they have this
Mhm.
debate about if a person is like a blank piece of paper, and the fathers or what he saw or what he thought is what makes him his personality,
Mhm.
or he born with that. What do you think?
Question. That's a really, really, now you're getting to something very deep, right? And this takes us back to the example of the family. Why in a family? I mean, remember, Hitler, Adolf Hitler had
Hmm.
brothers and sisters, and his family members didn't do what they did. Hitler made choices. So, what you're asking is why? Was Hitler born that way, or did he become that way because of his environment? And That's a profound question that psychology tries to understand. And I think it's a combination of both, Martine. Think about you and your brother. You and your brother are born in the same city. You have the same parents. You have the same economic situation. You both live in the same house. You both receive the same resources from your parents. But emotionally, you're very different people. You have different emotions. Maybe you're more sensitive, or maybe you're more insensitive. Maybe you are more analytical. I don't know. I have not spoken to your brother. But despite growing up in the same home with the same parents in the same family, you guys are very different, I imagine. Are you and your brother very different?
Yeah, and I think I have a theory for that too.
What do you think?
I'm more serious than my brother. He's very happy. He runs from here to there all the time. And but he is also more sensitive than me. He cries a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you may be right. Maybe it's a combination of both because every person it's its own world, has its own emotions. But I think what makes those emotions of or what you are, your personality, your own personality, is also the environment in a way.
Yes,
Because
definitely.
uh, I really think, obviously, my mom and my dad say that they don't, but I know for a fact because I have lived. The way they treat my brother is different the way they treated me.
Of course.
Because they were first parents, they didn't know how to do some things.
Mhm.
They were more strict. And maybe my brother does is more sensitive than me because he is like that. But
Right.
the fact that, for example, my mother uh, uh, is less strict with him than she was with me, I think that also makes him more sensitive and makes that sensitive of him become something um, more. You
Yeah.
understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the same situation with my brother. But the question is, and literally the same, I have the same situation with my brother. But the question is, do you think your mom and dad treat your brother differently because they learned from raising you, or because they see that he has a different emotional composition than you?
Mm,
You can't treat a strong, serious person with the same in the same way that you treat a sensitive, optimistic person.
mhm.
So my question is, do you think they adapted the way they treat your brother according to his personality? Or do you think they changed because they learned from the mistakes they made with you? Or
Maybe
both?
both. Maybe
Both.
both.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So Martine, this is a great conversation because this is real, right? Imagine when you make a mistake. Let's say that in the future you make a big mistake. Not illegal, not a crime, but you make a big mistake. But your brother doesn't. That's my point. People make choices. Yes, we are impacted and influenced by our environment, but also our internal emotional world and our genetics. Our genetics are an influence. Even though you and your brother are brothers, you have different genetic compositions. And maybe one of you is more athletic than the other. Maybe the one of you is more intellectual than the other. But you have different compositions. And I think that this is also related to the conversation of crime. In the same family, you could have one kid who's a criminal, or maybe you have a family of criminals and you have one kid who doesn't want to be a criminal, and you ask why. According to what we're talking about, if you believe that the environment has 100% control of who you will be in the future, then it makes sense to say, yeah, people who are born in poor environments are going to be criminals. It's logical if you follow that line of thinking. But this is why I say it's so important to understand that circumstances and environment are not what determine our lives. They're a big factor. I agree, a huge factor. Education, family, I get it. But at the end of the day, each human that lives on this planet has a choice that they make, Martine. Every person, regardless of anything else, we make a choice. And this is the importance of making those good choices. So, Martine, we'll stop there. I really enjoyed our conversation. I wanted to push back a little bit on the end of your presentation there, but you did a great presentation. There was a ton of information there. And in our next class, we're going to watch the recording together. I'm going to pause and just explain a few things and give you some feedback about how we can improve your speaking, but in general, good fluency, Martin.
Thank you.
All right, man. Well, we'll stop there, Martin. So have a good day, and I'll see you on Wednesday.
Okay.
All
Goodbye.
right, man. Thanks. Bye.